There's a whole lot to like about this next guest, but I think the thing I like the most in this moment is that he never attempted to hide the presence of a Chinese spy balloon over our country because of the political costs he would incur. Of course, I'm talking about the great Chris Bedford. Hey, man.
I mean, I have tried to smuggle a few Chinese spy balloons in my day, but not for political reasons.
Yo, is this amazing? So, like, the defenses we're getting of Biden, because the other thing that jumps out at me, too, and I'm losing my mind over this, is him saying, well, I wanted to shoot it down last Wednesday, but they told me not to. I mean, are those the actions of a commander-in-chief, of a guy who's in charge?
This has been the most embarrassing balloon incident I've ever seen happen to any adult ever, and I actually lost a whole string of balloons for a 5-year-old's birthday in front of a kid once. This absolutely defeats that, and it was totally my fault too. No one's buying it. The president's being grilled, his advisors are being grilled. Pete Buttigieg was being grilled over the weekend because no one is buying this. But this balloon was just an unstoppable force that happened to go over all of our, or not all of our, but a number of our very sensitive military installations. It was one heck of a distraction this weekend, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'll give you that. But that's the part I thought was so disrespectful is China's, their take on this was, well, it was just a weather balloon that blew off course. That's an insulting explanation because they're knowingly insulting our intelligence. If I said to Jimmy Failla, the wind blew me into flash dancers. I didn't plan on going, but the wind blew me in here and now it's blowing the money right out of my pockets, Jenny. We got to do something about this climate change. Could there be anything more disrespectful?
And that's what it is it's the disrespect. And this is not just a normal balloon. It's a pretty sophisticated piece of surveillance technology. And it has the ability, which we didn't have for years and years, to be able to go up and down. And when you're up that high in the jet stream, you can basically choose what direction you want to go and steer a balloon by finding different winds, moving different directions at different altitudes. This is something that the Chinese are pretending was a mistake, and we're even actually saber-rattling a little bit after it was exploded, saying that there would be repercussions.
Yeah.
But it's just a kind of a mascot for how actually unserious America is, because the balloon in that matter is almost a distraction. Mm-hmm. I mean, when President Trump came in, they found out that the Interior Department was surveying American land with drones that they bought from China. Mm-hmm. We have tens of thousands of Chinese spies in our universities and in our corporations, but there are secret Chinese police stations operating in Manhattan that were finally getting exposed by reporters before they got raided. There's TikTok on millions of our children's phones. So if our government was half serious, they would buy American drones. They would deport a lot of the nationals, who are Chinese nationals, assumed to be spies. They would raid these police stations. They would shoot down these balloons before pilots saw them. They'd ban TikTok. But we're not serious, and this balloon was just a spectacle of how unserious we are to deal with the Chinese threat.
That's such a great point. Chris Bedford is on the line, and I think another, we could add to your statement about them not being serious is we wouldn't have found out about this if people didn't have cameras on their cell phones in Montana.
That's wild. They claim that this has happened before. The Trump administration was denying it or saying it was not even comparable, like a glimpse off of the coast. Mm-hmm. The administration, and this is a sad thing, knew this was over a military base that has intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they didn't want to tell the American people so that Blinken could go over to China this weekend to be bullied by them. They didn't want to upset China. So identifying an enemy spy craft above your military targets and not wanting to make a scene about it is what a weak power does. Maybe if the Secretary of State was going to visit Kenya, the Kenyans wouldn't want to complain about Americans watching them too closely because that would cause embarrassment. Because that's the difference in power here.
Yeah.
And that's what's on full display when we make decisions like that. Even more embarrassing than not shooting it down right away is hiding it so you don't ruin Blinken's party.
I mean, imagine that. And the only reason they probably came out and said, well, we're not going now, this is ridiculous, is they had to do something, okay? But this is the part, I kind of want you to speak to this, okay, is when you were talking about the dichotomy in power between us and Kenya, per se, in a hypothetical. Technically speaking, okay, we are a much larger superpower than China, but the reason they've closed the gap as expeditiously as they have is because of the weakness we've demonstrated, is it not?
That's exactly right. The only thing necessary for the United States to completely defeat China is to disengage, to stop buying from China, to stop selling to China, to refuse access to our universities and our science to China. If we simply started ignoring them, then they would collapse. We don't actually have to have some kind of big Lord of the Rings battle to the death with this country. We just need to understand our addiction and pull away from it. It's been undermining our economy for decades. It's gutted our industrial base. It's got us addicted to this ridiculous green fuel stuff that even ups our manufacturing costs more and makes us less competitive. They spy, they steal. And the reality is, they're not that great at it. They steal our technology, but they're not very good at reproducing it. You can buy the knockoffs on the internet for cheaper, and a lot of the time, they're knockoffs that are cheaper and they're bad. That infrastructure that they're building that's so terrifying in China, that the highways that go up overnight and the dams, well, the dams are cracking and the highways don't last very long. They're still made in China. So there's a lot of serious problems that regime has, but their main strength is our addiction.
Now, it's a great point. We're talking to Chris Bedford, and I know, like, when it comes to the knockoffs and everything, I can tell you that firsthand because my producer Mikey bought a knockoff doll, a blow-up doll that was made in China. Nothing like the Vegas quality. Nothing. I mean, it's not even close, Bedford. It's not even close.
It's a very embarrassing emergency room visit at the end of the day. And you could have just avoided that by buying American.
Mikey, if you'd just be more patriotic, you'd pay the extra money for the inflatable Cinnabons. You don't have to go to the ER. That's what Bedford's saying. That's why you have him on the show, Mike. He gives you good guidance. Let me ask you this, because you make a great point economically about the damage it would do to China if we decoupled, per se. What kind of damage does that do to us? Is there a short-term damage because we don't have the transient nature of globalism and goods being immediately available? Like, what could we do? Like, is that feasible, is my question.
Yeah, there would be short-term damage, which is why the decoupling needs to be something that corporations and the government are thinking about on a major level. Now, the microchip aspect is a danger, and the fact that the Biden administration is shutting down our energy fields, shutting down, just recently over the weekend, shut down a permit for a copper mine that we would need for these powerful microchips. Those sorts of things are dangerous. During COVID, we became intimately aware of how much we were reliant on China for pharmaceuticals. Everyone agreed, and politicians from both sides said, well, we need to fix that. Well, what's actually being done to fix that? We would need to restore American capacity, but it's obviously there. The market is there. During the Trump administration, they showed that we could actually become energy independent. All of this stuff is completely and totally possible. But yes, things would get more expensive for a period of time as manufacturing moved back here, and we'd have to relearn some of the capabilities that we have. We couldn't just send our best and brightest anymore to create stupid new addictive apps and toys for your phone. They would have to be working on more serious things. But we have that capacity. We have that education system. We can do it.
Yeah, listen, I would love to see it happen, just as someone who realizes it's really weird thing we're doing where we have this big lead over them, but we're slowly just giving it up. And it's all for convenience. It's all for the, like you said, a new shiny app. Oh, there's a dog on a skateboard. I got to get this app and watch the dog on the skateboard. But like, but it's like TikTok is so bad. Abbott just filed a motion a little bit earlier anyway, made an announcement that he's going to ban it from state, legislative phones and stuff like that. Do you, at least at a bare minimum, do you see us decoupling from TikTok?
Yes, I think that's starting to gain momentum. And we're reaching an age where, even just aside from Chinese technology and spy technology and TikTok, folks are starting to wake up to the fact that your phone and all the things that come with it and the social media are not exactly just this happy pastimes that mean no harm. They can actually be dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this all the time. When we invented manufacturing, it took about 30, 40 years before someone said, should we stop feeding children into these factories? I know they have tiny hands, but and the same thing is going to be true for this. Maybe 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds should not have access to this kind of social media because it changes your brain. And that used to be like a crazy old Luddite idea just 5-6 years ago, but now a lot of normal parents and folks are sitting there saying, yeah, I don't want my kid to have access to this either.
Yeah, nowhere in the world is there a kid who'd be better off if only he spent another 20 minutes on social media. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
They're not writing.
Me neither.
Yeah, no, nobody. Definitely not adults. I mean, I've said this before, Bedford. Like, Twitter really is a fight club for people who don't want to get hit.
It's exactly true. One of my favorite stories ever in D.C. was this silly competition they used to have called the funniest D.C. celebrity, which was usually neither funny nor celebrities. But one guy was one of the neoconservative reporters back in the day was tweeting about how bad the set was, live tweeting it as if people couldn't read it. And the comedian, the other DC nerd, got off the stage, walked up to his table, and punched him in the face so he could see it. And I loved it. It was Twitter became real life
for one day. Because what I try to explain to people is everything. People who don't speak Twitter, like I try to say, everything you tweet on Twitter to someone was an invitation to get into a fight. Like, you could literally write, I miss the cartoon Garfield. And someone is going to respond to that like, yeah, but Trump, or something ridiculous. And now you're like, wait, what? I have no idea. Trump ate lasagna. Yeah. Dude, I don't even know what's going on. I'm so confused. But that is social media. Like, I'm hoping at the very minimum, enough parents get the TikTok thing. I don't know that they do, but I think it'd be a start, because the problem is, man, like we were saying, we're bleeding out this lead to China, and it's all because we've gotten so fat and lazy, like as consumers here in America. But the bigger problem is that we've gotten fat and lazy, like in corporate leadership positions and certainly at the top of the government.
Yeah, exactly. We need to. The federal government needs to actually step in a little bit on this, because a lot of our corporate leaders are addicted to quarterly earnings. They'll say that this is not possible. They can't possibly do this. When you're a company like Apple, who's so enmeshed in China, that's not a great long-term strategy, because Apple their technology is being stolen from, and eventually they'll be barred again from the Chinese market that everyone always claimed, the burgeoning Chinese market. We're going to go in there. But once they start to become successful and the Chinese are able to steal the technology, they ban you from the Chinese market. They sell their own knockoffs there. And then before you know it, you might get nationalized. So they start to spy on you. They start to make demands of you. Yeah. These guys are making agreements with the devil. But there needs to be a push from some statesmen to say, kind of like we did with Russia. Hey, when we're fighting in Vietnam, you can't manufacture Firestone rubber in Russia anymore, because that's getting our boys killed. Yeah. You have to start making those calls.
Defense wins championships, Bedford. Defense wins championships. So I gotta read this speech to the team, because they're screwing it all up. Well, this was good, and by the way, and thank you for the points on the blow up doll, because we're trying to work with Mikey.
You gotta be safe out there.
Let's go, Mikey. Play some D. Good stuff, Bedford. We'll do it again soon, brother.
Talk to you soon.
You're the best, buddy. There he goes with some words of wisdoms. I mean, it is Mikey Monday, and we have to interject not only on behalf of Mikey's living companions, but his inflatable ones as well. But now's no time for a Mikey dating intervention. Quick